for our AVST Academy webinar exclusively for customers. Today we're going to be talking about configuring the CX Mobile client. Pat Haney, our training manager, is going to be walking us through the session. Just a couple quick things before Pat gets us going. We will go ahead and make these slides available to you in a follow-up email once we conclude if you're interested in seeing the slides. And in addition, along with that, most of the session Pat's going to be sharing his screen, so if you want to go back and review any of that, we will also have a recording of this that will be available to you to go back and view. And so again, follow-up email for that. We will also have time for questions, and just want to let you know you can type your questions in at any time during the webinar. There's a question box toward the bottom. If you have it minimized, use that orange arrow in the upper corner, and we'll, of course, remind you when it's time for the questions toward the end. So with that, Pat, go ahead.
All righty. So today we're going to take a peek at what makes CX Mobile tick. Go into some of the configurations a little bit deeper, so you can see something more than just the user stuff that you normally see on our different material we produce. Anyway, so there are three different products that we call CX Mobile services. Two of them are actually the same thing. It's CX Mobile for Android and CX Mobile for iPhone. These are clients that you can download to have your iPhone or your Android device talk and manage your CX mailbox. The other one is called CX Mobile for the web. It's basically a web-based or web-formatted web phone manager, and it's basically used for mobile devices that can't have the client. I guess that would be a BlackBerry if they existed still, and maybe Windows, stuff like that. It's a mobile formatted app that runs on Web Phone Manager that allows you to change your availability settings, and that's pretty much all it does. But that gives you some functionality if you don't happen to have one of the other devices. All the technology you're going to see, some of it can look pretty deep. Some of it is fairly common to I don't know, the different people on the webinar here, but it's basically industry standard technology. There's nothing proprietary about the way that or the technology used to have the mobile services and your mobile device talk with a CXE server. We use PHP, we use SOAP, it's standard TCP ports. There's nothing we do special other than the client itself. So it makes it really easy to deploy it, really easy to understand it, really easy to find support. Now, that being said, as usual with any kind of industry standard thing, especially with Windows, there's a million different ways to implement the website that supports CX Mobile, and it is a website. You can't browse to it. It's just your phone uses it as a gateway to get to the CX system. But there are many different ways to do this, and you know, typical with IT, there's movies, songs, stories, and plays about the best way to do an IIS website. Well, that being said, there's a bunch of ways to do it. We're going to show you the most common way and maybe some tips to implement that website. There's really nothing to it, but mostly the differences are going to be how secure that you want to make this implementation, and you should keep that in mind. Remember, you're now exposing an application to the outside world, and that application is now going to have the ability to talk to your messaging server, so you want to keep that in mind. Also consider further training if you're not familiar with web technology or making websites. There's a lot of books out there, there's a lot of material on the web that'll help you understand how to use, say, IIS or how to use Apache. So the client itself, as I said before, runs on Android or Apple. It allows you almost total access to your CXE mailbox, and it actually does some stuff that the Web Phone Manager doesn't do. So you have access to messages, you can make calls, you can change your availability, greetings, any kind of mailbox setting that you could change in Web Phone Manager or over the voice interface, you can change on the web interface as well. You have access to contacts, and you have access to a directory of the other subscribers on the CXE system. And this is also helpful if you're going to, say, send a message or or call one of those subscribers. It gives you the ability to make calls both inbound and outbound, depending on how you have it set up and how you implemented your CXE. And the nice feature here is you can make a call through your CXE system, thus hiding your caller ID if this is a business call. It's a great way to separate out business calls from personal calls if you have a personal cell phone. And also incoming, we have a feature called call screening that works on the voice interface. Well, the app takes it, or this application takes it to a new level. It can actually send an alert to you that you have a call coming in, and then you can screen that call before the call is even sent to your telephone. So it can be pretty handy. So how this works is you have a web server running on either Apache or IIS, and that web server has to have a connection through the DMZ, and this should be in a DMZ, and for those of you that aren't familiar, that's called a demilitarized zone. It's a zone that you'll set up in your firewall that allows limited access, and what you do is you restrict who can converse with a device from the internet to this zone, and from that zone to your protected zone inside your enterprise. So you basically create rules that say this protocol can be used by this type of person. So a rule here would be only SOAP and HTTPS can travel between the CXE system server and the web application. And that would deny the ability for anything else to get through to your CXE system. So anyway, the web server, obviously it has to communicate back and forth with CXE to make this work, but it also has to communicate out to the different providers, to Apple and Google. And it does that to send notifications for calls, notifications for updates, notifications that any kind of thing that change in your mailbox or incoming call, that type of thing, it gets sent out through either Google or Apple to your device. That device obviously has to be able to communicate with the web server in order for this to work. So you have to have communication running in a number of different ways here. The ports and how you set this up is available on the documentation. We're going to take a peek at that a little bit later. The documentation can be found on Partner Express. It can be found on the forum. It can be found on the DVD with all the CX software. There's a book basically that shows you how to do this stuff and what ports need to be lit up. So licensing. Prior to version 8.7 SU2, which is not out yet, you need a personal assistant license for the application to log on. You need a unified messaging license if you're going to be using it to listen to or manage your messages. Or an ATOM license. And for those of you that are not familiar, an ATOM license is a combination of personal assistant, unified messaging, and speech. So it gives you the total unified messaging experience and in one package as opposed to having to buy 3 different types of licenses. Now, and the reason I say SU1 or SU2, SU1 and below, 8.7, is that as of SU2, Service Update 2, which is coming out, I believe, in August, then the mobile client will be free. So it will not require a license for you to use the mobile client to manage your mailbox. It will only need a license for messaging. The client itself, or the software itself, is free. You just go to Google Play or iTunes App Store and go download it. There's no charge for that. So it works with Apple's, pretty much any kind of Apple device you're going to have. It says iOS 4. To be honest, I can't imagine somebody having a phone that old, but it will work with that 4.01 and better. You will obviously have to download the application. The website will have to have a cert that Apple will provide, and we're going to see that when we get into doing some configurations. The nice thing about Apple is since you're kind of tightly integrated into their ecosystem, they make it very easy to configure and use their devices, and we're going to see that with our own little device. Google is or Android 2.3 and better. Again, have to download the application. It's for free. You'll obviously have to have a Google account to go do that. The difference is to make Android devices work, you will need a Google account for the CXC system. And that account will have to have an API account configured for the cloud messaging service. This is free. Instructions are in the book how to do it. It isn't really that hard. You go get an account, you register for an API and mobile services, and then you will get a project ID, a project number, and an API key. And you're going to need the number and the API key. And we're going to see where there's a typo in our configuration program where it's asking for a project ID. It's actually asking for a project number. They kind of changed that on the fly maybe about a year ago or something like that. They changed what they needed. So there's nothing to do on the CXE system itself. If you have the mobile app running on IIS, it talks to CX, and then everything magically shows up. There's nothing you have to do to the CXE server, system server, other than allow it access to communicate to the web server. The web server itself is identical to the one that you would use for Web Phone Manager. Runs on Microsoft IIS or Apache. You can install it on the same web server. You can even install it on the same website. And this is what I've done here. You'll see it. It's a trick I learned from the pro services people. Basically just drag it all together in one big shot, and then everything works. The website will have to have PHP installed, and you'll have to install it with CURL, XSL, and SOAP. The system will check to make sure that those are installed before it lets you run it. That's also not a big deal. There are instructions all over the place on how to install PHP. You can get PHP Manager for IIS. That'll make it pretty much a mouse click to decide what you want and have it done. Web server, of course, accessible from the internet, also access to the system server, and it isn't a bad idea to do this all with SSL so that it's all encrypted and safe. So a couple of best practices here. First is give it a simple host name, and this will be the DNS name you're going to go look at from your phone. Something simple like cxm.yourcompany.com or cxm.avst.com. Something easy, because remember, you're going to have to type this in on an iPhone or something like that. You don't need to have a million different obtuse names, slashes, and stuff like that to get to the mobile application. You generally use an IP address for the CX to talk to the web server. However, everything external to that, you need to be using DNS or a DNS host name. And if that doesn't work, nothing's going to work. So you got to make sure that the name is proper and everything is working. Also, don't overdo it with security. I know this is a pet peeve of mine. CXE has a tremendous security policy. You can have up to a 15-digit password. Those can be hard passwords, and you can make them renew, every so many days, say 30 days, and you can have it lock out the mailbox if they don't renew. Okay. A mobile application, just like the unified messaging connector, if you're using unified messaging, needs a security, or rather needs the security code to your CXE mailbox to function. And if it goes overdue or it expires and you don't put it back in, or you put it back in wrong, what happens is the app is going to log in a lot really fast. And so it's not going to be like 3 calls like it normally is. It's going to be blam, it doesn't work, now my mailbox is locked out. So one of the things you need to do here is not make it overly hard to use this type of application, or just don't overdo it. You will quickly make any of the cool things that CXE does useless, because in my case, mine was expiring every 30 days, and we have like a number of different password length, and basically it would expire every time I went to, or it would lock up every time I went to use my mobile app, because I forgot my password, because my password's 100 digits long, and they all got to be unique. I'm a pretty technical person. I can keep a lot of numbers in my head, but if they keep shifting like that, I can't. So 6 digits is an immensely hard, if you make it so that they can't be trivial passwords, that's an immensely hard password if you're going to dial in and try to crack it. So you don't need to have them expire every month or every month and a half or 90 days. People are going to have a hard time hacking it in the first place. Of course, you're going to have that Google account, and remember, if you're under a crunch, it's going to take some time to do this before you get the deployment. So it's good to have this all before you start installing the app on the web server and trying to make it work. I stole this second bullet from our engineering people, and actually let me distill this back to something something more understandable. Basically, your network has to work. You have to have internal or IP-based communication between the CXE system server and the web server. Those addresses have to be real. You can't. They have to be able to be routed. The DNS has to be able to work on them for the two systems to be able to communicate. And it's the same thing with the external network. The external DNS name to get to CX Mobile has to work. If it's not configured correctly or the IP addresses cannot route, none of this is going to work. These are cell phones, by the way. I know they're getting better and better, but your data connectivity can come and go by this second. And the reason I say this is if you have your device set up to say screen calls, and you step into an elevator or something like that, or you walked out of the zone or out of a cell where it couldn't reach you with that badge to say, hey, you got a call coming in, the call is going to go right to your voicemail, and you're going to get a missed call and be kind of flummoxed by why didn't I get that call? Well, because you weren't communicating at the particular time that call came in. So, and it depends on your network. Mine works reasonably well, depending on where I'm at, and especially where I live. It's pretty stable, but when I travel, sometimes it's not, and I don't get the calls. The other thing is these cell phones, Android and Apple, are completely different, as if I needed to mention that. But where it comes into play here is Apple lets us do things that Android doesn't, and vice versa. They all have their API and their feature set that they allow people like us to create applications for. But they don't necessarily match one-to-one with each other. And I'll give you a great example of that. On an iPhone, which is what I have, if I miss a call, if I get a message or anything like that, the Apple will put this cool little red ball by the application icon to tell me something happened, like I got a call or I got a message. Android doesn't do that. Or rather, Google won't let us do that with Android. Let's just put it that way. So what happens is when you have an enterprise with different people, or different phones rather, you're going to get that. How come mine doesn't do this? I want mine to do that notification too. Well, it can't because they are different, and they don't let us always do different things with the application. So enough talking. Let's get to it. Okay, first things first. Let me get to my web server. Because what I have is a CXE system server. It's running, what's funny is not only is my website and my mobile connector on the same website, it's also all on the same machine. The CXE you're about to see, my web servers, everything is actually running in a virtual network. So the CXE software itself is on the DVD under a folder called Web Applications. And you'll see them here. CXMS, that's our mobile service, Mobile Admin, which is a client that you can use to do some administrative tasks, and Web Phone Manager. And under these are basically the website itself. So to make this website on your web server, you basically create a folder, and this is an IIS server, so it's under inetpub www.root, and I have mine under Web Phone Manager. And all I did here is I just copied the mobile folder in my Web Phone Manager folder. Remember, they can run on the same site, same server, and the installation is the same. So you install PHP and get it working, you can get Web Phone Manager working. Well, if Web Phone Manager is working, CXMS is going to work as well. So there, you just basically copy this up to the site that you see just copy everything, folders and everything. Then what you need to do is you need to share some stuff. You need to share the certificates folder. And what you have to wind up doing here is usually it's the anonymous ID or the anonymous browser logon that IIS uses. You can also share it with the with my administration logon, but that needs to be shared, read and write access, so that the CX server can write certificates, can write the configuration folder, and can write logs. Those all need to be shared so the system can read and write those folders. Especially configuration. You'll see generally two different files here, a config.xml and a config_defaults. Defaults is the default setup. So basically if you screw up, you just delete the config.xml, go back in and recreate it. And what you'll see here is, which is something you will probably never have to see, is just simple XML. You have a tag here, you have what's my CX system called, what's the IP address to it, and the rest is actually pretty much just default. I don't think I touched it. So like I said, if you screw up, just delete it and you can create another one. So once you have it all copied up to the web server, you have to tell it that you have a website. Excuse me, and you do that in IIS Manager. Basically, under the default site, add website, and then put in the parameters to make your website. So what you have here is a typical website. But under the basic settings, you'll see I'm connecting as CX admin. Typically, we have you connect as the internet anonymous user. It doesn't matter. This is the way I did it to control my control access to it. There's default document. You're going to want to put in PHP if it isn't there already to be able to run the PHP type application. And basically put in a website. When you build the website, you'll have to give it a DNS name. The DNS name has to match. So what I did here is I made it just cxe.cxtraining.avst, and then of course I'll be able to browse to my CXMS folder after that. Really nothing to it. So here's Web Phone Manager, and then to get to CXMS, you just put in the folder because it's under that same folder, and the administration program is called admin.php. Actually, that's the same administration page for Web Phone Manager as well. So when you log into this for the first time, what it's going to do is it's going to ask you the IP address of your server, and then it's going to come up with a configuration page. I'm not doing that because I don't want to have to like reconfigure my whole network for this. So once you log on with an administration logon, you'll see something along the lines of this. This is what you'll see already configured for you when you log in for the first time. You can also change the name of the server, change the IP address if you have to do it. You can add multiple CX servers here. The one mobile service can connect to many system servers, so you can share it. What language, English, and then one of the first things that comes up is whether or not all these parameters here are working. And this is a really cool thing. It's going to make sure that the directories are writable by the application. It's going to note that you have the modules that you needed for PHP installed properly. It's going to check file uploads. This is part, actually these bottom three are part of the PHP installation. There's a session and an upload file that you have to create for PHP, and it has to be writable by the web server. And then you have to have at least 10 meg for file size for that as well. And those instructions are in the book as well. But this will, the first time you boot it up, you should see a bunch of nice green passes here. And if you don't, you got to go back and fix them before this is going to work. Down below, you have what is the server address, which is, this is the main server that CXMS is installed and what is the URL path, including this server address, to get to the web services.php program. So what you'll see is down here what the complete URL should look like, and that should look like what you see up here in the address screen, because the admin.php is in the same folder as cxmns.php. System server, it'll find this when you gave it this IP address. It will find the name of that server, and then you can do a test to make sure that we can talk and write certificates. Once you get a success on that, then you can press update and the Apple cert will come flying down to you. Like I said, look how easy it is for Apple. You just simply say update, it goes and gets the Apple cert, and then you're up and running. The other thing you have to do is physically enter in your project ID and your API key that you're going to get from Google. Those will be on the web. You'll be able to just cut and paste them typically to be able to do this. Cut and paste them in, press OK. It'll save this application, and then it should be up and running pretty much as long as everything's green here. It's pretty much what it takes to get that running. Now, when that happens, what you'll see over here on administration, let me take a peek at my mailbox. If you have a mobile device and if you have Personal Assistant lit up, like I do, then on my devices for mobile, you'll see a new window pop up that isn't there normally. And this gives you, or as an administrator, it gives you some access here to do some setup for their mobile client. I can turn on notifications, what kind of alert that I'm going to give them, simple pop-ups, the accept, reject, acknowledge, accept, reject, transfer. These are all a mirroring of the voice commands that you could have if you're using the voice level call screening. So this can also be set up a little bit by the telephone itself, so you really don't have to concern yourself with a whole lot of this, especially platform name, client version, model, and token. These will be automatically populated as soon as you connect with a mobile device. They pop right up. The only thing you need to have here is a personal assistant license, and they have to have a mobile device programmed in order to make this work. At that point, you're set up. You can download, and you should be able to log into the web and install the application and have it talk, which I think I can do. Hopefully I won't blow it this time and expose my password. Okay, up there we go. All right, let me turn on my iPhone here and see what there is to see. There we go. Let's make this a little bigger. Well, that didn't work. There we go. There we go. Okay, so I have the app already installed, and I'm actually logged out. So what you'll do when you first install it, well, actually, let me go back. To actually find it, you go to the App Store, and all you have to do is search on AVST, and it will pop up. So search. AVST Mobile, and then up it pops. You just press get and then install, and then the application will install itself. Once it does, it'll install, and you'll see a screen like this. And you put in basically the server name, what kind of connection it's supposed to have, your mailbox ID, your security code, and your telephone number. Of course. See how fast I can change my password if everybody's paying attention. Did it. Awesome. Gonna let me in? Nope. Ah. That's embarrassing. Hang on a second. I probably just blew up my password again. Awesome. See, guys, remember that line about fixing the password? That's happening. Hang on a second. Luckily, there's a very cool feature on Web Phone Manager that allows you to reset your password in just such an emergency. All righty. I feel lucky. There we go. See how easy that was? These are some cool features, by the way, that the automatic password reset when you lock out on Web Phone Manager. It's actually quite handy. So select one of those items it asks you about. You could say later. And then what you have here, the call list of calls that came in, contacts, directory. I can just hit any kind of number here, search for everybody that starts with that number, or I could type in somebody's name if I want. My availability settings, I can change to whichever one I want. One of the cool things that 8.7 does is not only can you manage your greeting with this application, you can actually record it as well. 8.7 introduced the ability to have multiple greetings or a greeting per availability state. So instead of the standard busy out of office greeting, I can have mobile, I can have in a meeting, I can have out for the day, I can have a custom greeting for each one of those. And to record that on my mobile phone, I just simply tap it and then press the record key, and I can record it right then and there instead of having to log into my mailbox and do it through the telephony interface. And then, of course, all the other settings that are available for your mailbox, your availability settings. Now, this is where you would set up the mobile location. The availability on CX can use your mobile location to route calls. So if like I walk away from my desk or I go out for lunch or something like that, the system knows I'm no longer sitting in my office. It can now route calls over to my mobile instead of sitting at my desk. If I want to have that, that's where you set that up. Notifications, which are mobile notifications, I turned that on. I didn't want it. If you had a pager, you would be able to manage it here. We don't have that. Your telephone interface, how do I want to play my envelope? What wants to be that envelope? What kind of messages do I get first? You know, that type of thing when I'm on my TUI. So it's actually a fairly cool application. Really about all there is to it. Can't really demonstrate a call. When you get a call, it will come in and a badge will come up. You have a call from so-and-so. Do we want to accept? You can just hit the button and accept it. If I wanted to make an outgoing call, I could hit one of my contacts. I could hit the directory, or I could dial and just simply dial a phone number. It would go out and dial that phone number and then connect me through my cell phone rather than me having to dial it by myself. It's really cool with the directory. I can basically call anybody in my company by pressing the directory, pressing their number. It'll show me his availability state, and then I can say call or just send him a message from that point on right there. Instead of having to call or go in and then have the ring command through speech or something like that. So you see, it's actually it's a pretty cool application. So now, if we have any questions.
Okay, great. Thanks, Pat. Okay, if you would like to submit a question, you can do that from the question box, which is probably minimized. Use the orange arrow in the upper corner, and then you should see a spot where you can type in a question. And just as a quick reminder, we will send you these slides as well as a link to the recording in case you want to go back and review any of the content. Okay, Pat, there was a question actually about the password reset. Are you able to show that? I assume, I believe a user can they or can they not do that from the mobile app? Do they have to go to Web Phone Manager?
Hey, you know, that's a good point. Well, the automatic password reset, that is, yeah, hang on a second. Should show that. Normally what you'll see is something like this on Web Phone Manager. So that allows you to log in and change your security code that way. Let me get Reflector running again. I didn't show that, hang on. I just turned mirroring off. Okay, you're gonna make a liar out of me, aren't you? No devices connected. Awesome. Oh, now it's going to complain. Yeah, well, the short answer to that is, hang on a second, let me try and kill it. Yeah, that's technology supposed to help you. Long and short of it is, yes, in your account settings, you can do this. Let me start it and restart it again. Second time's supposed to work better and smoother. I don't understand.
I think you jinxed yourself.
I sure did. There we go. There we go. Good Lord. Okay, let me go back. Yeah, and settings, more settings rather, account, it'll say change security code, and I can change the security code there. I can't, however, if I don't have a security code, I can't reset it with my cell phone unless I go to the web interface. You could browse to Web Phone Manager and do it through the mobile display, I guess.
Okay, so the user would have to know what the URL is in that case.
Right.
So, right.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Another question. With push provider settings, can the same certs be used for our lab and production systems currently working in lab but need to set up in the production site?
I don't see why not. I mean, I guess we could check on that, but I don't see why you wouldn't be able to. I mean, it's an account, it's credentials or a certificate to go talk and have that conversation. I don't know, I doubt they're single use. So
okay.
we'll put it this way, the Apple one, I mean, when you go download it, it's going to give you a cert. I mean, there is no difference in the two of them, so I can only imagine that Google's the same way, but I guess we could find that out.
Okay, and we can pass along these questions as well to whomever internally might be able to also supplement the answer. Another question, are there settings that need to be adjusted so that calls don't time out when transferring to the mobile app?
Yes, but that's the same settings as everywhere else. Hang on. Oh, now the stupid phone's not going to go away. Okay, put it over here. Over here in personal settings, phone numbers on Web Phone Manager, you'll have your mobile number here, the type of calls you're going to get, and then the call timeout. That's what you're talking about there. You can adjust that for however long you need to prevent it from going to your cell phone's voicemail and to be able to pull the call back, or to make sure it doesn't ring, you know, 1 or 2 rings and then pull the call back before you get a chance to get it. It's kind of something you might have to play with. You can also, I mean, if you wanted to do it, I mean, Matt Sawyer showed me how to do this. You can actually forward your cell phone to your CXE, and it should know, if it's getting the caller ID, it should know that this is a phone, log on, can receive calls. It's going to see the caller ID and say, put it back into your mailbox. So if you wanted to do it that way, instead of using the voicemail from the cell provider.
Okay. I'm just doing a quick scroll through the questions, and it looks like that pretty much wraps those up, unless someone's still working on one. Just want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us. So our goal is with these Academy webinars to offer these about once a quarter, so 4 times per year. When we close up the webinar, you'll get a quick pop-up with maybe 2 or 3 survey questions, and if you're interested in letting us know, well, feedback on the webinar, but also possible topics that you'd like to see for future sessions, we would love to hear from you and know what would be interesting as we plan for the next round of these. So take a couple minutes to do that for us, and I want to also let you know in that login, or sorry, in the follow-up email that I will be sending with the slides and the recording, I'll also include a link to our online user forum. You can, if you haven't accessed that before, you can create a password, and actually a lot of our documentation is there as well that might be helpful for this topic and other topics. So you can always send any questions to our email, which is usergroup@avst.com. So thanks again for taking the time to join us. We hope you found this interesting and educational. And Pat, thanks so much for presenting.
No problem.
All right, have a great day, everyone.
All right.
To learn more about AVST, please visit www.avst.com.